Chapter 1. The first time Sebastian Donovan saw Adelaide Hartwell, his mind was flooded with 1,000 fantasies of holding her close. Tonight, his fantasy was coming true. "Are you sure about this, having an affair with me?" In the dimly lit room, the man leaned over the woman, his low, husky voice barely restraining his desire. Adelaide offered him a kiss. "Uncle, I'm sure. Aren't you afraid Julian will find out?" Her lips were warm, and Sebastian's eyes darkened. Julian Donovan. Her husband. "Are you doing this to use me for revenge against your cheating husband?" Sebastian's hand tightened on her waist. Adelaide let out a soft moan and reached up to caress Sebastian's handsome face, her voice as fluid and seductive as water. "Uncle, are you scared to touch me? Afraid our little secret will get out and ruin your precious relationship with your nephew?" "Ha," Sebastian scoffed, lowering his head to capture her lips. "There's nothing in this world that I'm afraid of." His kiss was fiery and possessive, his tongue sweeping in to conquer everything. Uncle. Don't be in such a hurry to call out. You'll have plenty of chances for that later." Sebastian ripped her dress open, his hot hands roaming freely. 3 hours later, Adelaide left the room, her legs trembling. The party downstairs was still in full swing. Today was Arthur Donovan S.R.'s 80th birthday, and all the Donovan descendants had come from far and wide to celebrate. The hall below was bustling with people. She had been thoroughly exhausted, and her posture was a little strange as she walked. If anyone saw her, they would surely suspect something. Adelaide took a different staircase down. The exit led to a dimly lit garden. Julian, didn't you say you were going to break it off with me?" A woman's breathless moan came from behind the rockery. Adelaide's steps came to an abrupt halt. "You're too damn tempting." "How could I bear to? That was just something I said to placate my wife. As long as we're careful and she doesn't find out again, we'll be fine." Julian's deep, husky voice drifted over. "And you'd better behave. Don't you dare try to let Addie find out. No matter how many women I have on the side, her position as my wife is unshakable. Understand?" The man's voice carried a hint of warning. I know." Adelaide stood a short distance from the rockery, her nails digging into her palms. Her heart felt as if it were being squeezed viciously, the pain making it hard to breathe. It wasn't the first time she'd walked in on them. Why did her heart still ache uncontrollably? The two carrying on their tryst behind the rockery were none other than her husband and his mistress. She knew those two voices better than anyone. A month ago, she had gone to Julian's office to bring him chicken soup and had personally witnessed her husband having an affair with his assistant, catching them in the act. Overcome with grief, she had taken the matter to their parents, determined to get a divorce. But the marriage between the Donovan and Hartwell families was a massive alliance of interests. No one agreed. Arthur Donovan S.R. merely subjected Julian to a round of family discipline, ordered him to apologize, and made him promise it would never happen again. Her own family also tried to persuade her, saying that all men cheat and she should just turn a blind eye. Besides, Julian had already promised not to do it again. She refused and insisted on a divorce. Julian wouldn't agree to it. He knelt before her, begging for her forgiveness, swearing that she was the only one he loved and that his assistant had seduced him in a moment of weakness. If she would just forgive him this one time, he guaranteed he would never make the same mistake again. No one knew how much pain Adelaide was in. Although their marriage was an alliance, she and Julian were childhood sweethearts who had genuinely liked each other. They grew up together, dated for 4 years, and had been married for 3. She had never imagined that Julian, the man who had rejected countless other women for her, would cheat on her like any other man. The 7-year itch. It seemed very few could truly escape it. She wanted a divorce. She cried for 3 days and 3 nights, begging the Hartwells, begging the Donovans, begging them to let her go. But the daughters of wealthy families are born to be tools for marriage alliances. She cried until her tears ran dry, even went on a hunger strike, but they still refused. The day she woke up in the hospital, Julian held her hand and said, "Addie, if you really can't stand it, why don't you have an affair too? Then we'll call it even." She stared blankly at the ceiling, her dry voice answering, "Fine." Julian hadn't expected her to say that, and a flicker of discomfort crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. Adelaide loved him to the bone. She would never do something like that. She was just still angry, saying it to spite him. But Adelaide was serious. No one truly loved her. Everyone sacrificed her happiness for their own benefit. And so she decided to get revenge on them all by having an affair with Sebastian Donovan, the golden boy of the Donovan family. Chapter 2, Julian, what if I get pregnant? Roxy Fletcher asked, her hands pressed against the rockery, her voice intermittent, her cheeks flushed. You know my rule. Julian suddenly stopped. Take your pill, I only acknowledge a child from Addie's womb. Roxy's voice was laced with grievance. You really love her, don't you? Yes, I only love her, Julian admitted without hesitation. You're just my sexual partner. Don't get any ideas about what you're not entitled to, understand? Then, aren't you afraid she'll find out again? Roxy turned to wrap her arms around his neck, her voice low. This is your family's garden, and you still had me come over. She drank too much and went back to her room to rest. She won't find out. With that, he gripped the woman's waist and started moving again. Adelaide listened to the lewd sounds, a mocking smile tugging at her lips. Julian, your love is so cheap and disgusting. This time, she chose not to confront them. It was pointless. She still wouldn't be able to get a divorce. But she wouldn't compromise. She refused to spend the rest of her life with a faithless, filthy man. As for the divorce, she already had another plan, and Sebastian Donovan was the key to its success. A flash of determination crossed Adelaide's eyes as she turned and walked away from that sordid place. She didn't notice a pair of deep, dark eyes watching her from behind. After her slender figure had disappeared, Sebastian Donovan emerged into the moonlight. He watched the direction she had gone, the corner of his mouth curling into a meaningful smile. Addie, you're the one who came to me this time. You can't escape. The birthday banquet ended. Julian Donovan returned to their villa. Pushing open the door, he saw Adelaide already lying in bed. Addie, he said softly, walking to the bedside. Adelaide didn't respond. Seeing that she was fast asleep, Julian quietly left the room and went to the guest bathroom to shower, telling a servant to immediately take his perfume-scented clothes to be washed. Only after he was certain there was no trace of any other scent on him did he return to the bedroom. He gazed at Adelaide's innocent face, love surging in his eyes. Although he couldn't control his physical desires and slept with other women, he knew clearly in his heart that Adelaide was the only one he loved. It was just that they had been together for so long, and the day-to-day routine of married life had become too dull. He needed some excitement, a taste of something wild. It didn't affect his love for her. As long as he was more careful and didn't let her find out he was still in contact with Roxy, their marriage would be fine. Besides, she loved him so much. With time, the wound in her heart would fade and she would forgive him. That's how it was for all the couples in their circle. They could still live a good life together. Then they would have a child, and they would be a happy family of 3. Lost in his fantasy, Julian held Adelaide and gradually drifted off to sleep. After he was asleep, Adelaide slowly opened her eyes. Expressionless, she pushed him away, creating distance between them. She didn't want to lie in the same bed with him. But the villa was filled with servants sent by both the Donovan and Hartwell families ostensibly to serve, but in reality, to watch them. The moment she and Julian slept in separate rooms, the elders of both families would take turns having talks with her the next day. She felt suffocated. For now, other than temporary compromise, she had no other choice. Adelaide touched her flat stomach, her feelings complicated. She hoped that today's indulgence would yield a good result, helping her break free from the Donovans and Hartwells and fly far away. To gain her freedom. Chapter 3, Early in the morning. Adelaide woke up early and was washing up in the bathroom. The mirror reflected a youthful face. It was Julian. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, nuzzling his face against hers. Addie, why did you come back on your own last night, without waiting for me? Adelaide, brushing her teeth, replied coolly, I couldn't find you anywhere. In the mirror, Julian's eyes darted down guiltily, not daring to meet hers. I drank a bit too much and felt dizzy, so I just found a random room to rest in. The servants probably couldn't find me. Oh, Adelaide responded indifferently. Julian looked at her face, free of makeup, and thought about his indulgence with Roxy last night, a pang of guilt rising in his heart. Addie, let's live a good life from now on. He held her tighter, so tightly it was as if he were afraid she would run away. I promise I'll never make you sad again. So this is how skilled a man can be at lying. He didn't even blush, even though he was screwing another woman just last night. A wave of sadness washed over Adelaide. How many times have I been deceived? Forget it. It doesn't matter anymore. After brushing her teeth, she removed Julian's hands. You go ahead and wash up. I'm going to the dining room to see if breakfast is ready. She started to walk out of the bathroom. As she turned, the fair skin of her nape came into Julian's view. Her skin was so pale that a small red mark on it was particularly glaring. Julian's gaze froze. Addie, what's that red mark on your neck? An inexplicable unease crept into his heart. Adelaide subconsciously raised her hand to touch it, the wild images from last night involuntarily flashing through her mind. It must have been Sebastian, done while her mind was a complete blank. Men are all the same, always looking for a thrill. Adelaide, mimicking Julian's composure, said nonchalantly, I don't know. I must have scratched it. Is that so? But it looked so much like a hickey. Julian's heart skipped a beat, a strange feeling washing over him, but then he thought again it couldn't be a hickey. Putting aside how much Adelaide loved him, even if she couldn't easily forgive his mistake, she would never actually cheat and sleep with another man. Besides, she was a very traditional woman. They had dated for 4 years in college, and she had only ever allowed him to kiss her, not even letting him touch her intimately. The first time they had sex was on their wedding night. That was why he had said she could have an affair too, to make them even. He'd said it because he knew she would never do it, and it would also lessen his own guilt. Do you want to put some ointment on it? Julian, having calmed himself down, asked with concern. Adelaide started walking again. No need. She finished her breakfast without waiting for Julian. Just as she was done, she received a message from Sebastian Donovan. He wanted her to meet him at a private spa resort. The moment Julian came over, she stood up ready to leave. A servant handed her her white handbag. Julian took her hand. Addie, where are you going? To my Pilates class. The daughters-in-law of wealthy families didn't need careers. Even if they went to a top university, it was only to prove they had good genes and wouldn't produce stupid offspring. Their daily lives consisted of maintaining their appearance and preparing their wombs for childbirth. Hearing her say this, Julian naturally had no suspicions. Addie, you're already in great shape, Julian said with a smile. Better than a model, you don't need to go to class every week. Adelaide pulled her hand away and walked briskly toward the door. I'm used to it. I'm leaving now. Watching her retreating back, Julian's brows furrowed slightly. For the past month, Adelaide had remained cold toward him. It was his fault for hurting her. He could only make it up to her slowly. He took out his phone and made a call. Is that Herm's bag Addie likes in stock yet? His assistant on the other end replied, I was just about to call you, sir. It just arrived this morning. I'll go pick it up from the store in a bit. Julian nodded. Good. Make sure nothing goes wrong. Addie's birthday is in half a month, and this is my surprise for her. Yes, sir. Half an hour later, Adelaide arrived at the spa resort. Chapter 4, this resort was one of Sebastian Donovan's properties. When the receptionist saw her, she immediately came forward with a warm, professional smile. Miss Hartwell, you have an appointment with Mr. Donovan, I presume? Please follow me. Adelaide nodded slightly and followed the receptionist into the spa. After a few twists and turns, they finally reached their destination. The receptionist smiled. Mr. Donovan is inside. You can go in by yourself, Miss Hartwell. I'll take my leave now. After the woman left, Adelaide hesitated for a moment before raising her hand to knock on the door. Come in. A deep, magnetic voice came from inside. Adelaide turned the doorknob and pushed the door open, only to be met with a steamy scene the moment she looked up. Sebastian's tall, lean figure stood by the edge of the pool. His upper body was bare, the firm lines of his muscles faintly visible in the misty air. A few drops of water slid down his broad chest, disappearing into the white towel wrapped around his waist. His hair was slightly damp, a few strands clinging to his forehead, adding a touch of sexiness and unruliness. When Sebastian saw Adelaide enter, a playful smile touched his lips, but his eyes burned with desire. He spoke slowly. Addie, you're here. I've been waiting for you. Adelaide's face flushed slightly. She averted her gaze from his body, feigning composure as she asked, Uncle, did you need me for something? Sebastian walked toward her with his long legs, each step carrying a sense of pressure. Are you feeling all right? Adelaide instantly understood what he meant. The memory of last night's madness flashed through her mind, and her cheeks grew redder. "Uncle, I'm fine." "Is that so? Then it seems we can go for another round today." Sebastian stopped in front of her, leaning down, his warm breath fanning across her face. Adelaide froze for a second. "What?" "I got a taste last night, and now I'm addicted." Sebastian wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her body against his, and whispered in her ear, "If we're going to have an affair, let's go all the way." With that, he kissed her lips. The bag in Adelaide's hand fell to the floor. She wrapped her arms around Sebastian's waist. She didn't refuse him. Instead, she met his advance. Because she wanted to use his seed to escape the prison of her marriage alliance. The two were locked in a deep kiss for a long time before Sebastian scooped her up and carried her toward the steaming hot spring pool. After another passionate kiss, Sebastian picked up a small foil packet from the poolside and tore it open with his teeth. Adelaide noticed his action and said breathlessly, "Don't use it. Don't use it." Sebastian lifted her chin, a half smile playing on his lips. "Aren't you afraid of getting pregnant with my child?" That was exactly what she wanted, but Adelaide shook her head. "It's uncomfortable. I'll take a pill afterwards." Sebastian leaned closer, a low chuckle rumbling in his chest. "You've got some nerve." "Let's go," Adelaide purred, hooking her arms around his neck, her captivating eyes gazing at him, openly seducing him. Sebastian's Adam's apple bobbed. He nibbled at the corner of her mouth. "They all say Julian Donovan's wife is the most prim and proper lady. Your behavior right now doesn't quite match what people say about you." "Doesn't everyone have two faces?" She tilted her head, laughing softly. "Besides, don't all men like a wild woman?" Just like Julian, who on the surface loved her to death but couldn't resist the seduction of his sexbot secretary. She was smiling, but there seemed to be a hint of sorrow in her eyes. Sebastian didn't like the sorrow he saw there. His warm lips slowly traveled from her cheek to her brow, his large hand gripping her waist. "Wild or not, I like you." In his eyes, she was a walking temptation even when she did nothing at all. Not giving her another chance to wallow in self-pity, Sebastian sealed her lips with his. The two spent a long time entwined in the private space. When the passion finally subsided, Sebastian carried the limp and pliant Adelaide out of the pool and into the adjacent resting room, placing her on the large bed. Then he turned and went out. After regaining some strength, Adelaide climbed up and propped her slender legs against the headboard, placing a pillow under her lower back. This would increase the chances of conception. After doing this, she stared at the ceiling and was suddenly struck by a sense of tragedy. She was so desperate to conceive another man's child, all just to escape an unhappy marriage. How pathetic. Adelaide started to laugh. As she laughed, two streams of tears rolled down the corners of her eyes. Her heart felt as if it were filled with sand, aching with a dull, heavy pain. Sebastian came in with a plate of food, just in time to see her lowering her legs from the headboard. "What are you doing?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Chapter 5. Adelaide lied. "Nothing, my legs were sore, so I propped them up for a bit." She couldn't reveal her true purpose, or Sebastian would surely not cooperate. Sebastian's deep, dark eyes stared at her for a moment, a half smile playing on his lips. Those dark eyes seemed to see right through people, and Adelaide felt a little flustered under his gaze. She stepped barefoot onto the floor, feeling a bit uneasy. Uncle, I should be going now. Not having anything to eat." Sebastian handed her a sandwich. "You just used up a lot of energy, you should refuel." "I'll eat it on the way." Adelaide took it and left, her steps a bit hurried. Except when she was seducing him for sex, she didn't really dare to be alone with Sebastian. His eyes were too sharp. They always made her feel like she had nowhere to hide, as if he had already seen right through her. "I'm going on a business trip abroad. Pick me up at the airport in 10 days. I'll send you a message." His deep voice floated over. Adelaide paused for a moment. "Got it." It was almost 2 in the afternoon when she returned to the villa. The maid saw her and asked, "Ma'am, are you still bringing Mr. Donovan his chicken soup today?" Chicken soup. Adelaide had to bring Julian chicken soup every day. The day she discovered his affair, she had been late with the soup. Julian, thinking she wasn't coming, had confidently started his office escapade with his lover. That's when she learned that, after drinking the nourishing soup she personally made for him every day, he would get intimate with his secretary. His work was demanding, and she was always worried he was getting too thin. So she had gone to great lengths to find a reliable traditional Chinese doctor for a herbal soup recipe, personally selecting the ingredients and herbs, putting her heart and soul into nourishing his body. And in return, he spent all that energy on his mistress. It made her concern feel like a joke. Adelaide said coolly, "Pack it up. I'll take it over now." The ridiculous part was that despite everything, she still had to pretend nothing had happened and eagerly deliver it. Because if she stopped, both the Donovan and Hartwell families would think their relationship was not harmonious and send the elders to mediate in turns. She was a person living under surveillance, a bond to maintain the Donovan-Hartwell interests. No one cared if the object was happy, as long as it served its purpose. Therefore, no one cared about her. The soup was packed, and Adelaide carried it out. Donovan Group. When Julian received the call from the front desk, he was pressing Roxy Fletcher against his desk. Hearing that Adelaide had arrived, he immediately pulled away from Roxy's body. "Go hide somewhere. Don't let Addie see you." Julian hastily straightened his messy shirt, then opened the window to air out the hormonal scent in the room. He had originally followed Arthur Donovan S.R.'s orders and fired Roxy, but he was so used to their office trysts that he couldn't stand it after just a few days. He had secretly brought her back, then specifically instructed the front desk to call him the moment they saw Adelaide. As long as Adelaide didn't know Roxy was back, there would be no problem. Roxy picked up her scattered clothes from the floor and put them on, her gaze on Julian full of resentment. "Since I'm such a secret that can't see the light of day, why did you even bother bringing me back?" Seeing she was a bit upset, Julian cupped her face and gave her a kiss to appease her. "Isn't this for the good of all three of us? If Addie finds out, she'll cause a scene again, and then the old master will get involved. I'm afraid it won't be good for you." Chapter 6, "Fine," Roxy huffed, her finger tracing circles on his chest. "She's bringing the chicken soup. Later, I'll personally feed it to you." Thinking of her method of feeding, Julian smirked. "Good. I'll be waiting for you to personally feed me." Roxy threw him a seductive look before reluctantly opening the office door and leaving. She didn't leave immediately. She waited for the executive elevator to open and for the person inside to step out before she turned and walked toward the regular staff elevators. Adelaide saw Roxy's back. She watched quietly, her face expressionless. If Julian couldn't resist fooling around with Roxy at his own grandfather's birthday banquet, it wasn't surprising that he would secretly bring the fired Roxy back to his office. Fortunately, she had never believed for a second that Julian would change. A leopard can't change its spots. "Addie, you're here." Seeing her enter the office, Julian walked toward her happily, reaching out to take the food container from her hands. Adelaide's nose wrinkled slightly. Her sense of smell was very keen. Even with the window open, which had dissipated much of the odor, she could still smell it. It seemed he had been with Roxy again. Good thing she no longer cared. "Here's the soup. Drink it while it's hot. I'm leaving now." Without even sitting down for a moment, she turned to leave. Julian grabbed her wrist. "Addie, aren't you going to stay and keep me company for a while? Why are you in such a hurry to go back?" Adelaide turned to look at him and said coolly, "Do you need my company?" For some reason, Julian felt there was a hidden meaning in her words, and that sense of unease returned. "Addie, of course I need your company." He put down the soup and pulled her into his arms. "Why don't you just stay for the afternoon?" He bent down to kiss her. The thought of what he had just done with Roxy in this very office made Adelaide feel nauseous, and she pushed him away. "I have to go to the hospital this afternoon. I can't stay with you." Being rejected, Julian felt a bit unhappy. But she hadn't forgiven him yet, so it was normal for her to be unwilling to be intimate with him. In fact, this showed that she cared about him. Only those who care get angry. Julian placated himself and held her shoulders. "What are you going to the hospital for?" "A checkup to prepare for pregnancy," she said. He remembered. Their families had been urging them to have a child. They had been married for 3 years without a single child, and the elders of both families were becoming implicitly displeased, frequently urging them to have one this year. The topic of having children came up at almost every family dinner. In truth, there was nothing wrong with either of their bodies. It was just that he hadn't been interested in having children these past few years, not yet ready to be a father, so he had always used protection. Of course, a bigger reason was wanting to have more time alone with Adelaide. But now, he had changed his mind. He needed to get Adelaide pregnant as soon as possible. Once they had a child, the bond between them would be deeper, and the tie between the Donovan and Hartwell families would be stronger. Addie would never be able to leave him. "Let me go with you after work," Julian offered eagerly. Adelaide shook her head, refusing. "No need. You're so busy with work, there's no need to take time off just for me. I have to go." She walked out of the office. Watching her leave, Julian felt a sudden tightness in his chest. She was still being cold to him. Before, if he had offered to do something with her, she would have been as happy as a child. Not like now, where her words were flat, her emotions were flat, everything was flat. She was completely different from the lively and lovely Adelaide of the past. Julian clutched his chest. His heart stung with a sharp pain, and guilt washed over him like a tide. It was all his fault for hurting her. Just then the office door was pushed open again. Roxy walked in. Seeing him clutching his chest, her face immediately showed a look of concern. "Julian, what's wrong?" she asked solicitously. Julian looked at her face and couldn't help but question himself. Was seeking thrills with Roxy really that important? Was the satisfaction of his physical desires really more important than his relationship with Adelaide? The pleasure was fleeting, but that fleeting moment would hurt Adelaide, make her disappointed in him, and make her lose her warmth toward him. Was it really that important? He asked himself over and over, but his heart could never find a definite answer. "Julian, what are you thinking about?" Seeing that he no longer seemed to be in pain, Roxy placed her hand on his chest and pressed her body against his. "Stop thinking. Let's continue the game we didn't finish." She took the initiative, seducing him, kissing him. Julian wanted to refuse, feeling he was letting Adelaide down, but gradually, desire triumphed over reason. He swept Roxy up and pressed her down onto the sofa. Meanwhile, Adelaide had arrived at the hospital. After a checkup, the doctor said, "Your physical health is very good. You can conceive directly. You are in your ovulation period these few days. Have you had marital relations with your husband?" Adelaide nodded. "Yes. You can increase the frequency. It will make it easier to get pregnant." She asked, "If I do get pregnant, how soon can it be detected?" 10 days after intercourse, the doctor said. Adelaide touched her belly. The first time with Sebastian last night, he had used protection. The next 2 times, she had coaxed him not to. This morning, they hadn't used protection either. Sebastian looked very strong. He didn't smoke or drink much. His seed quality should be very good. She hoped there was already a result in her belly. Otherwise, she would have to go find him again in 10 days. That night, Adelaide went to bed early as usual. Julian, having just showered and thinking about having a child, hugged her from behind, his hands caressing her body. He whispered in her ear, "Addie, aren't we preparing for a baby? We should." Chapter 7, Adelaide removed his hand. "Let's just get some sleep." "Addie, are you still mad at me?" Julian sat up and pulled her up with him. They looked at each other. Adelaide lowered her gaze slightly and said coolly, "You expect me to forgive you right now. Do you think that's possible?" Julian took her hand, his voice filled with guilt. "Addie, it's my fault. I shouldn't have given in to temptation and betrayed our love. Believe me, I've really changed." His eyes were incredibly sincere, as if he had truly turned over a new leaf. If Adelaide hadn't caught him cheating a second time, perhaps she would have foolishly believed him. She looked at the incredibly familiar face before her, yet it felt so strange. As if she had never known him at all. Because the Julian of the past wouldn't have lied to her, but now, his mouth was full of lies. His love for her was also filled with a nauseating falsehood. Adelaide suddenly didn't want to see his face. She averted her gaze to the dark night outside the window. "Just give me a little more time." She said it softly. "Just a little more time, and I can completely escape this prison and be free." But Julian thought her attitude was softening. After all, time was the best healer of wounds. Since a divorce was impossible, she had no choice but to compromise. A look of joy spread across Julian's face, and he hugged her tightly. "Addie, I know I made a huge mistake. Your coldness toward me now is my punishment, and I deserve it. I don't blame you. I'll wait for the day you're willing to forgive me." "That day will never come. I will never forgive betrayal." Adelaide let him hold her, her eyes, staring into the night, devoid of any joy or sorrow. Time flew by. Sebastian, who was supposed to be on a 10-day business trip, returned early. Adelaide had just finished dinner when she received a message from him. He wanted her to pick him up at the airport. She stared at the message, her eyes thoughtful. She had gone to the hospital for a checkup that morning. She wasn't pregnant. If she couldn't conceive Sebastian's child, her escape plan would fail. She would be trapped in the cage of their marriage alliance forever. She had to continue seducing Sebastian. "Addie, what are you looking at?" Julian put down his chopsticks and looked up at her. Adelaide put her phone away and stood up. "I have something to do, I need to go out." "Where are you going?" Julian frowned. "It's so late. Do you want me to give you a ride?" Adelaide shook her head, already walking toward the door. "No need. A friend of mine suddenly has a fever, and there's no one to take care of her. I'm going to check on her." "Who is it?" Julian asked. He and Adelaide were childhood sweethearts. They knew all of each other's friends. Adelaide lied casually. "A new friend I made in a baking class a few days ago. You don't know her, I have to go." She left in a hurry. Julian didn't think much of it and stood up from the dining table. Just then, he received a call from Roxy Fletcher, asking him to pick her up at the airport. Roxy's mother had been sick a few days ago, so she had gone back to visit and was returning today. She had already landed and was waiting for him. Julian figured that since Adelaide wasn't home and he was bored by himself, he might as well go. Roxy had been away for a few days, and Adelaide wouldn't let him touch her. He was feeling pent up. Chapter 8, Adelaide rushed to the airport and quickly found Sebastian Donovan in the arrivals hall. Dressed in a sharp suit, Sebastian stood tall and poised. When he saw Adelaide, a flicker of indiscernible tenderness crossed his eyes. "Uncle, why are you back early?" Adelaide asked softly. Sebastian's lips curved slightly as he leaned in and whispered, "I missed you, so I couldn't wait to come back." Adelaide's face flushed slightly. Sebastian naturally took her hand. "Come on, let's get out of here." As they walked side by side toward the exit, Julian's car happened to pull up. The car door opened, and a long, straight leg stepped out. They were about to come face to face. Adelaide's heart leaped into her throat. She subconsciously glanced nervously at the man beside her. Sebastian swiftly took off his overcoat and gently draped it over Adelaide, his arm naturally wrapping around her shoulders, holding her tightly in his embrace. The hem of the coat cleverly concealed her figure, and his strong arms skillfully blocked most of her face. When Julian saw Sebastian, he was first stunned, then his face broke into a wide smile as he walked over to greet him. "Uncle, why are you back early?" Sebastian, with a calm expression, nodded slightly. "Yes, I finished my business, so I came back early." Julian naturally noticed the person in his arms, and his eyes instantly became knowing. "Uncle, and this is," Sebastian's lips quirked, "your future aunt." "For real?" Julian had assumed it was just a casual fling, never expecting it to be Sebastian's girlfriend. This golden boy uncle of his never dated. What kind of woman could actually make his uncle consider marriage? He was suddenly very curious and couldn't help but peer into Sebastian's embrace, but he couldn't see clearly. "Is my future aunt that shy? She won't even say hello to me," Julian joked. Sebastian, holding the woman in his arms, shifted his direction. "She is indeed shy. I'll bring her to the estate soon, and you'll get to meet her then." "So you're planning a big surprise for us, Uncle," Julian chuckled, retracting his gaze. "The woman you've chosen must be extraordinary. I'm really looking forward to that day." "What are you doing at the airport?" Sebastian changed the subject. Julian scratched his head. "I'm here to pick up a friend." "Well, Uncle, I won't disturb you two any longer. I'll be going." After Julian turned and walked toward the departures hall, Sebastian slowly released Adelaide. Looking at her slightly tense face, he chuckled softly. "What, scared our affair would be exposed?" Adelaide bit her lip. "Aren't you scared? Me." Sebastian took her hand, his fingers weaving through hers to lock them tightly. "At worst, I'll get a lecture from the old master. What's there to be afraid of?" For a man, of course, it wasn't scary. The standards for infidelity were different for men and women. For men, it was called being a rogue, something not to be fussed over. For women, it was called being promiscuous and shameless, something to be condemned. Adelaide smiled, a mocking smile. "What are you smiling at?" Sebastian asked, raising an eyebrow. Adelaide said coolly, "Nothing, let's go." Sebastian led her away from the airport. Meanwhile, Julian, who had already walked into the hall, suddenly turned back, his gaze fixed on the two retreating figures. He saw the woman hiding in his uncle's arms, but only her back long black hair, a blue mid-length skirt, a slender and slim figure. That skirt, why did it look so much like the one Adelaide was wearing today? And her back looked so much like Adelaide's at this thought, Julian felt his temples throb. He subconsciously started to chase after them. Chapter 9. Roxy, standing nearby, saw him and ran over happily, throwing herself into his arms. "Julian, you came to pick me up," he froze for a moment. When he looked up again, the two figures were gone. Julian looked away and affectionately ruffled Roxy's hair. "Let's go. I'll take you to dinner first, then take you home." Julian took Roxy to dinner, and then, as expected, he took her home. 2 hours later, Julian pulled back from their passionate entanglement and went to the bathroom to shower. He wouldn't leave the scent of another woman on him, lest Adelaide find out when he got home. Once he was in the bathroom, Roxy glanced at the stuffed doll on the bay window. A hidden camera was concealed inside, and it had recorded their entire intense encounter. A smile curved her lips as she sent the video to Adelaide. At that moment, Adelaide had just come out of a movie theater with Sebastian. She didn't know what this man was thinking. After leaving the airport, he didn't even get food, instead dragging her to a movie. It was a 2-hour-long art film that made her drowsy, but Sebastian watched it with great interest. As soon as she got into the car, her phone rang. It was a short video, dozens of seconds long, sent from an anonymous number. She clicked on it. In the video, her husband was writhing with his mistress. Adelaide's hand tightened on her phone, her face turning pale. Immediately after, a provocative text message popped up. "Adelaide, you've known for a long time that Julian never broke up with me. We just finished having sex. You're probably at home waiting for him, aren't you? What a pitiful woman, all alone in an empty house. So what if you've known each other for over 20 years? He's still completely mesmerized by me. Julian doesn't love you anymore. He only stays with you because of your family's status. Every time we have sex, he complains about how bored he is of you, that doing it with you is as boring as going to work, not nearly as satisfying as being with me. If your family went bankrupt, he would kick you to the curb without a second thought and marry me. Oh, and by the way, I have some good news. I'm pregnant. Julian said he wants to keep it. When the time is right, he'll bring the child back to the Donovan family under the pretense of adoption and raise our child himself. You get to be a mother without the pain. Aren't you happy?" Next, a picture of a pregnancy test report was sent over. It showed that Roxy was 4 weeks pregnant. This was the source of her confidence to so blatantly provoke Adelaide. Adelaide took a deep breath, her hand gripping the phone tightly. "What are you looking at?" Sensing her emotional shift, Sebastian leaned over and looked directly at her phone screen. She quickly turned off the screen, taking a few deep breaths to suppress her surging emotions. "It's nothing. You don't look well." Sebastian cupped her face, studying it carefully. "Are you not feeling well?" Adelaide grabbed his hand, slowly moving it down. "Then does Uncle want to help me with a checkup? To get pregnant, she had to give it her all." "What, want to try some fun in the car?" Sebastian's hand slowly moved to the nape of her neck, pulling her into his embrace. Adelaide looked up at him, her beautiful, watery eyes filled with a captivating allure. Her hand rested on his chest, slowly tracing circles. "Does Uncle want to give it a try? Whatever you want to play, I'll play along." Sebastian bent down and kissed her lips. After an unknown amount of time, as the passion in the car reached its peak, Adelaide's phone rang. It was a call from Julian. Adelaide was lying on the reclined seat, her face flushed, her soft hand barely able to hold the phone. She wanted to hang up. A hot chest pressed down on her, clinging tightly to her back, and a low, husky voice whispered in her ear, "Darling, answer the phone." He pressed the answer button for her. Julian's voice immediately came through. "Addie, it's so late. Why aren't you back yet?" Adelaide's voice was unsteady as she spoke. "I have to take care of my friend." The man behind her, as if afraid he wouldn't be discovered, maliciously continued his movements. Adelaide tried her best to hold back, but her voice still came out broken. "I'm not coming back tonight. What's wrong with you? Your voice sounds strange." A sense of unease welled up in Julian's heart, and a terrible suspicion popped into his mind. "Does it? Maybe it's because I'm outside and the wind is too strong. I have to go now." The call ended. Julian stared at the phone screen, an intense feeling of unease and a terrible suspicion washing over him for some reason. During the call, he had heard unusual sounds that were very much like that. Could Adelaide really be having an affair with another man? No, that's impossible. Julian immediately rejected the idea. He couldn't believe it. Adelaide loved him so much, and she was a very traditional woman. How could she cheat on him? That was something a rebellious woman would do. She was a well-bred lady. She would never do such a thing. He must be overthinking it. Julian calmed himself down and put his phone away to rest. That night, he had a dream. He dreamt of seeing Sebastian at the airport again. He was incredibly curious to see what his uncle's girlfriend looked like. Just then, a gust of wind blew, lifting the woman's hair and revealing her entire face. It looked exactly like Adelaide. Julian woke up with a start. Just then, the bedroom door opened. Chapter 10, he looked over, still shaken, and his eyes met Adelaide's. Addie. Julian leaped out of bed, strode toward her and grabbed her wrist. He gripped it so tightly that Adelaide winced. "You're hurting me." Julian seemed not to hear, his eyes fixed on her. "Addie, were you really with a friend yesterday? Where else would I be?" Adelaide had unconsciously learned the calm composure of a cheater, just like Julian when he lied. She looked at him peacefully, without a trace of guilt. Julian stared at her, not missing the slightest expression on her face, but he saw nothing. "I was at the hospital all night. I need to go change." She gestured for him to let go. Julian slowly released her and watched her turn and go into the walk-in closet. Suddenly, he walked over and gently pushed open the closet door. Adelaide had just taken off her clothes. Her fair skin was exposed to the air, as delicate as the finest white jade, without any blemishes. And no traces of lovemaking. Julian breathed a sigh of relief. He really had been overthinking things. How could Addie be involved with his uncle? His uncle had a naturally cold face and kept everyone at a distance. In the past, whenever they encountered his uncle at family dinners, Addie would be quite afraid, not even daring to say much. She had later accidentally broken his uncle's favorite antique vase. Although his uncle didn't pursue the matter, she often complained to him that even though he didn't say anything, he always looked at her with an expression that could eat her alive. It scared her so much that she was even more afraid to speak to him. In Julian's memory, Adelaide and his uncle had almost no contact. How could they possibly get together? It was absolutely impossible. Julian reassured himself, but for some reason, a sense of unease still churned within him. Afraid of being discovered by Adelaide, he gently closed the door and walked away. At that moment, Adelaide glanced at the doorway out of the corner of her eye. She knew Julian had just been watching her. She had been prepared and had made sure Sebastian didn't leave any marks on her body last night. "Julian, the taste of worrying about your spouse cheating? Now you've experienced it too, haven't you? That feeling of unease isn't pleasant, is it?" Adelaide smirked. The next few days, Adelaide's life remained as calm as still water, except for the occasional rendezvous with Sebastian, carrying their affair to its fullest extent. She seduced him with all her might, and Sebastian willingly fell into her trap. Finally, 10 days later, she got the result she wanted. Adelaide walked out of the doctor's office, clutching the test report tightly in her hand. Overjoyed and excited, she couldn't stop the corners of her mouth from turning up. She was pregnant. With Sebastian's child, the prison of her marriage alliance could no longer hold her. Adelaide was in an exceptionally good mood, still smiling as she returned to the villa. "Addie, what are you so happy about?" Julian smiled along with her, taking her hand and leading her to the sofa. "Is it because your birthday is coming up? By the way, the estate called. They said you should celebrate your birthday there this year. They'll invite everyone back to liven things up. The old master also said he has a gift for you that you're guaranteed to like." Only the patriarch had ever celebrated a birthday at the family estate. The younger generation didn't have that privilege. The fact that they were making an exception for Adelaide made her think for a moment, and she knew the reason. It was just to compensate her. She couldn't care less. However, celebrating her birthday at the estate was an excellent opportunity. A smile played on Adelaide's lips, because that day would be the day of her rebirth. Chapter 11, Adelaide, dressed in an exquisite lotus pink long gown, gracefully entered the old family estate. The estate was decorated with lanterns and colorful banners, adding a festive atmosphere to her birthday celebration. The vast living room was already filled with people. Close relatives from both the Donovan and Hartwell families had arrived, gathered together, talking and laughing in a harmonious atmosphere. Seeing her arrive, everyone greeted her warmly. Her mother, Eleanor, took her hand and sat her down on the sofa, saying kindly, "Your sister-in-law is already pregnant with her second child. You and Julian need to hurry up, too. Is there any news yet?" At every family gathering, the pressure to have children was an inescapable topic. Hearing this, others also chimed in with their concern. "That's right, Addie. You and Julian have been married for 3 years. How come you're not pregnant yet? In another 2 or 3 years, you'll be 30. You'll be considered an older mother then. If you have a daughter, you'll have to have a second child anyway. It's better to have them early while you're young and your body can recover well. Are you not feeling well? In a couple of days, I'll have my sister-in-law give you the Chinese medicine prescription she took. That prescription is very effective. She got pregnant after only a month. You take it, and you'll surely have good news soon." Adelaide looked at the pairs of concerned eyes, a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold and without mirth. At this moment, it was as if everyone had forgotten about Julian's affair, casually urging her to have a child. Right. When a man cheats, the only one who ever gets hurt is his wife. No one else cares, they might even be secretly gloating. A hand rested on Adelaide's shoulder. Julian sat down beside her, smiling as he addressed the relatives. "Addie and I are working hard. I'm sure we'll have good news soon." As he spoke, he kissed Adelaide's cheek, his eyes smiling. "Right, Addie?" Just as Adelaide was about to answer, someone shouted, "Uncle, you're here." Everyone's gaze turned to the entrance of the living room. Sebastian Donovan strode toward them, dressed in casual black clothes. His handsome face was expressionless, still exuding that cold, abstinent aura. Only Adelaide knew that he was a man of heavy desire, merely pretending to be uninterested in women. His gaze swept over Adelaide's face, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment. Adelaide subconsciously touched her flat stomach and guiltily looked away. Sebastian was the star of the Donovan family. With his arrival, no one cared about whether Adelaide was having a child anymore. They all vied for a chance to talk to him. Sebastian sat on the sofa, leaning back lazily, bored by his relatives' attempts at conversation, occasionally offering a brief reply. Adelaide wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she felt his gaze occasionally flickered to her. When he looked at her, the corners of his mouth seemed to curve up in a faint smile. With his child in her belly, Adelaide felt a pang of guilt. After sitting for a while, she made an excuse and left the living room. She went to Arthur Donovan S.R.'s study. Adelaide stood at the door, took a deep breath to calm her nerves, then raised her hand and knocked. "Come in." Adelaide pushed the door open and went inside. Arthur Donovan S.R. was sitting behind an antique desk, holding a calligraphy brush, practicing his writing. Seeing Adelaide enter, he glanced up slightly, put down his brush, and said slowly, "Addie, it's your birthday today. What brings you here?" "Grandfather, I have something to show you." She took out the pregnancy test report and placed it gently on the desk. Arthur took one look and his face broke into a wide smile. "Addie, you're pregnant." Good, our Donovan family is growing again. Addie, you've done a great service." "This child is not Julian's," Adelaide said. Chapter 12. "What?" Arthur Donovan S.R. thought he had misheard. Adelaide looked him straight in the eye and said, word for word, "The child in my belly is not Julian's." The smile on Arthur's face froze completely. He slammed the brush down. "How dare you?" Before he could finish, Adelaide interrupted him. "I'm pregnant with Sebastian Donovan's child." 1 second, 2 seconds, a full minute passed. Arthur looked as if he had just heard the most absurd thing in the world, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you say?" "Say it again." "I said I'm carrying my uncle-in-law's child." She deliberately emphasized the word uncle-in-law, her voice crystal clear. "You're talking absolute nonsense." Arthur refused to believe it. How was this possible? "I know what you're trying to do. You're just trying to trick me, to make me agree to your divorce from Julian." Adelaide calmly opened her bag, took out a stack of photos, and placed them in front of the old man. "If you don't believe me, you can look at these." A dozen photos were spread on the table. Arthur, suppressing his rage, looked through them. They were all snapshots of Adelaide and Sebastian's time together eating, watching movies, holding hands, kissing. Arthur's face grew darker and darker. The last photo was taken in Sebastian's apartment. He was shirtless, holding Adelaide in his arms, his body covered in faint, intimate scratches, and he was looking down at her with eyes as gentle as water. Arthur's expression finally cracked. You shameless woman, how dare you seduce my son? This is a disgusting, unethical scandal." A mocking smile played on Adelaide's lips, but her eyes held a look of determination. "If you all hadn't so stubbornly blocked my divorce, how would I have ever gotten involved with him? Everything that has happened today is because of your selfishness." Arthur's face flushed with anger, and he slammed his fist on the table. "You must abort this child. The Donovan family will not tolerate such a disgrace. I can have an abortion, on the condition that you agree to my divorce from Julian. If you don't agree, I will make this public." Adelaide, completely unafraid of his fury, calmly stated her terms. "Think about it carefully. Once this is exposed, what kind of scandal will the Donovan and Hartwell families be plunged into? The Donovan family's reputation, built over many years, will be destroyed. Sebastian will be embroiled in scandal, and his company, Blue Cloud Group, will surely be affected." Adelaide paused, a smile gracing her lips. "My freedom versus your precious, immense interests and Sebastian's future. I'm sure you know which one is more important." Arthur trembled with anger, his face ashen. If Adelaide were pregnant with some other man's bastard child, it would be one thing. They could just have her abort it and pretend nothing happened. The Hartwells would be indebted to them, and the Donovans could even leverage it for more benefits in their business dealings. But the man she had an affair with was Sebastian. There was no way to clearly assign blame. Sebastian was the son of his old age, a prodigy who had single-handedly founded Blue Cloud Group. He was his proudest son. How could he have done something so immoral? Arthur was about to die of anger. But he still cared most about Sebastian. He would never allow his brilliant son to be tainted by such a stain. After a long while, Arthur seemed to have lost all his strength. He slumped into his chair and said helplessly, Fine. I agree to your divorce from Julian." Adelaide smiled sweetly. It was just as she had expected. She quickly took a pre-prepared divorce agreement from her bag and handed it to him with both hands. "Then please find a way to make Julian sign it." Arthur took it resignedly. "Are you sure you want a divorce? He just made a mistake that all men make. Must you hold on to it so tightly? There are plenty of men in the world. I don't need a weak man who can't control his urges." Adelaide's face was calm, but her tone was sharp. With that, she walked straight out of the study. At that moment, her phone vibrated. She took it out and saw a text from Roxy. "It's your birthday today. Want to know who's really more important in Julian's heart, you or me? You'll find out the answer soon enough." Chapter 13. Adelaide read the text with a blank expression and turned off her phone. Meanwhile, in a corner of the living room, Julian was engrossed in the racy photos Roxy had sent him, a look of anticipation and excitement on his face. Don't be late. He hesitated about whether to go find Roxy, but today was Adelaide's birthday. Desire and reason wrestled, and in the end, desire won. He stood up, ready to leave. Just then, a servant approached him. "The old master would like to see you in the study." Julian had no choice but to go to the study first. On the way, he ran into Adelaide. Thinking about his impending rendezvous with Roxy, he took her hand and said, "Addie, something urgent came up at the company. I have to leave early." He lied calmly, but his guilt made him unable to meet her eyes. Adelaide took in his panic and his lies, a small smile playing on her lips. She didn't expose him. "I know," she said coolly, her face showing no disappointment. Then she pulled her hand away and walked off. Julian watched her retreating back, and for some reason, his heart suddenly dropped, as if something was slipping away. He clutched his chest for a moment, then, without thinking too much, walked into the study. The old man handed him the divorce agreement. "Julian, sign it." Julian's mind was filled with images of Roxy's black stockings. He signed his name without even a careful glance. Then he said urgently, "Grandfather, I have something urgent to attend to. I'm leaving now." With that, he turned and hurried away. Arthur Donovan SR watched him go, sighed helplessly, and slumped back into his chair. Adelaide stood in the courtyard of the estate. Soon, a servant found her and handed her the signed divorce agreement. She looked at the somewhat sloppy signature and could imagine how anxious Julian must have been, so eager to find his mistress. He probably didn't even know he had signed divorce papers, but it didn't matter anymore. Adelaide looked up at the few white clouds drifting across the sky with a few small birds flying freely. A smile touched her lips. Soon, she would be free too. "What are you thinking about?" a magnetic voice came from above her. Adelaide turned around and met Sebastian's deep eyes. She instinctively stuffed the divorce agreement into her bag. "Uncle, we'd better not be seen alone together at the estate," Adelaide said, taking a step back, her attitude becoming distant. Sebastian's dark eyes narrowed, a wicked curve to his lips. "What, afraid our affair will be exposed? Does Uncle want to be labeled as the man who messes around with his nephew's wife?" Adelaide countered. Sebastian stepped closer, his tall frame looming over her. "I don't mind." Adelaide was silent for a few seconds. "I'll be going now." She turned to leave, but her wrist was caught by the man behind her. With a slight pull, she was yanked into his embrace. "What are you doing?" Adelaide panicked, struggling to break free from his hold. Sebastian held her tightly, his chest pressed against her back, his large hand slowly settling on her flat stomach. "I hear they're all pressuring you to have a baby. Do you think there might already be one in here?" Adelaide's heart skipped a beat. She forced herself to remain calm. "How could that be? I take my pill every time." "If you are, you have to tell me." "I'll take responsibility," Sebastian whispered in her ear, his tone serious. "Uncle, you're overthinking things. That's impossible." Adelaide struggled free from his embrace and fled in a panic, as if a ghost were chasing her. Sebastian stood where he was, watching her, a frown creasing his brow. She seemed to be running away from him. Neither of them noticed that behind a nearby wall, a pair of eyes had witnessed the entire scene. Chapter 14, the family banquet was held for Adelaide's birthday. But as soon as she returned to the living room, she told everyone she had something urgent to attend to and left in a hurry. She was rushing to the government office to get her divorce certificate before it closed. With the signed divorce agreement, getting the certificate was a smooth process, not even requiring Julian's presence. Arthur Donovan, SR, had connections. He made a call, and the 2 divorce certificates were issued without a hitch. Adelaide walked out of the office, the sunlight warming her skin. She let out a sigh of relief. From now on, she was a free woman. Returning to the villa she had shared with Julian, she packed her bags as quickly as possible. There wasn't much, a few clothes and important documents. While packing, she received another message on her phone. It was from Roxy again, a few pictures of Julian at her place. "See. In his heart, I'm more important. Why else would he leave your birthday party to be with me?" Adelaide looked at the triumphant text with a blank expression, picked up her phone, and typed a reply. "If you love recycling trash so much, then he's all yours." Roxy replied quickly. "What do you mean?" This time, Adelaide didn't reply. She checked the time. It was now noon. Her flight was in 5 hours. She had known that today's negotiations would go smoothly, that Arthur Donovan, SR, would compromise for the sake of the family's and Sebastian's reputations and set her free. And she had been right. So last night, she had booked a flight to the Netherlands. She would not be returning to the Hartwell family. As a daughter, she had no right to inherit the family business, yet she bore the responsibility of a marriage alliance. Even after divorcing Julian, she would soon be treated as a new commodity, married off to a new man, and forced to repeat the same life. This was the tragedy of a wealthy daughter. No lack of material wealth, but a lack of personal autonomy, born to be a tool for marriage alliances. Adelaide closed her suitcase, a determined glint in her eyes. Her life was hers to control. She would not be manipulated by anyone. She picked up her suitcase and walked out. Just as she reached the door, she received a call from Sebastian. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Hello, Uncle. Why did you leave early?" The man's voice was still low and cool. Adelaide said, "Something urgent came up. When will you be done?" "Probably tonight. Come to my place when you're done. Stay the night." Adelaide bit her lip. "Okay, I'll come over when I'm done." "Good girl." The call ended. Adelaide's hand rested on her stomach, her feelings complicated. "I'm sorry, Uncle. Our wrongful relationship must also end." She would have no more ties with anyone from the Donovan or Hartwell families. Adelaide strode away, pulling her suitcase behind her. She took a taxi to the airport and sat in the departure lounge, quietly waiting. Half an hour later, the boarding announcement sounded. She stood up, pulling her suitcase, and after going through the procedures, she boarded the plane. "The plane is about to take off. All passengers, please turn off your mobile phones. Thank you for your cooperation." Just as Adelaide was about to turn off her phone, a message from Julian popped up on the screen. Addie, something urgent came up at the company. I have to fly to the next city. I won't be back tonight. I'll make up for your birthday later, okay? Another lie. Adelaide smiled faintly, indifferently deleted the message, then turned off her phone, removed the SIM card, and snapped it in half. Then she inserted a new SIM card. A phone number that no one but her knew. The plane slowly took off, the city shrinking below. The white clouds reflected in her eyes, which finally showed genuine joy. Not Julian, not Sebastian. No one could stop her from leaving. Chapter 15, Julian had just finished his bout with Roxy. He leaned against the headboard, a strange emptiness blooming in his chest. It felt as if something had broken away. He picked up his clothes from the floor and started to get dressed. Roxy, coming out of the shower, saw him and quickly asked, "Where are you going?" "Home." Julian's movements were hurried. He had a nagging sense of unease, an intuition telling him he needed to go back now. Roxy grabbed his arm, pouting. "Didn't you promise to stay with me tonight? Next time." Julian kissed her forehead and then left in a rush. "Julian," Roxy shouted after him, but he didn't stop, leaving without a backward glance. Roxy gritted her teeth in frustration. Back home, Julian went straight to the bedroom. Adelaide always went to bed early. She should be asleep by now. He pushed the door open. The room was pitch black, not a single light on. Julian turned on the lights and found the bed neatly made, with no sign of anyone having slept in it. His heart sank, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. He strode to the closet and opened it. All of Adelaide's clothes were still there. His gaze drifted to the vanity. The array of cosmetics was also there. He breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe she had gone out for something, like the time her friend was sick and she went to take care of her. Julian went downstairs to the living room and casually asked a servant, "Where is the madam?" The servant replied, "The madam left this afternoon with a suitcase. She didn't say where she was going." "She left with a suitcase?" Julian's brow furrowed. The unease he had just suppressed came rushing back. He quickly dialed Adelaide's number. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable. Please try again later." Julian stubbornly kept trying. The result was the same every time. The call wouldn't go through. He panicked. Had Adelaide found out about him and Roxy? No, how could that be possible? He had hidden it so well, and Adelaide hadn't shown any unusual behavior. She had a fiery temper. If she had found out he was still in contact with Roxy, she would have thrown a huge fit, not just stayed quiet and done nothing. She must be angry at him for not spending her birthday with her, so she ran away from home. Yes, that must be it. He had to find her immediately. Julian, his heart racing, rushed out of the house and drove straight to the Hartwell residence. When he arrived, he banged on the door. A servant let him in. Adelaide's father, David, frowned. "Julian, what are you doing here so late?" Julian asked anxiously. "Dad, is Addie back here?" "Why would Addie be here at this hour?" Adelaide's mother, Eleanor, came over upon hearing the commotion, her tone displeased. "Don't tell me you did something to upset Addie again," and she ran off. The last time they found out Julian had cheated, Adelaide had come straight back to her parents' house. She thought her family would be her safe harbor, but the moment she mentioned divorce, they started trying to persuade her to stay. The result was obvious. The divorce didn't happen. After Julian was punished by Arthur Donovan SR, the Hartwells, against Adelaide's wishes, sent her back to the villa. "Mom, Dad, Addie is probably just angry that I didn't spend her birthday with her. I haven't done anything to wrong her," Julian explained. Eleanor was skeptical. "Julian, you've already wronged Addie once. Don't make the same mistake again. You know how strong-willed she is. If she finds out a second time, who knows what kind of scene she'll make?" "Mom, I know. I won't do anything to wrong Addie again." Though he said this, Julian was racked with guilt. Since Adelaide wasn't here, he had no mind to linger. After saying his goodbyes, he left without delay. After he left, Adelaide's older brother, Caleb Hartwell, came downstairs. He watched Julian's retreating back, his feelings complicated. Because that afternoon, at the Donovan estate, he had personally witnessed Adelaide and Sebastian embracing. Their intimate posture indicated that their relationship was far from ordinary. His sister had very likely cheated on her husband with Sebastian. The gravity of this matter was so severe that Caleb didn't dare tell anyone, keeping it bottled up inside. But he was very worried, feeling that a storm was about to break. Chapter 16, back in his car, Julian took out his phone and started calling their mutual friends. Is Addie with you? No, why would Addie be here so late? After hanging up, he called the next person, but the answer was always the same. Adelaide wasn't with any of her friends. Julian gripped his phone tightly, the unease in his heart growing stronger. He forced down his anxiety, thinking that perhaps Adelaide had specifically asked her friends not to reveal her whereabouts, so they were all denying it. Yes, that must be it. Her friends were probably helping her hide. Julian slammed his foot on the gas and the car shot forward. He was going to check on them, one by one. He arrived at the first friend's apartment building, parked the car, and rushed to knock on the door. The door opened, and his friend looked at him, confused. Julian, what are you doing here? What's going on so late? Julian eagerly peered into the apartment. Is Addie here? Don't lie to me. The friend shrugged helplessly. I already told you she's not here. I really don't know where she is. Unwilling to give up, Julian pushed his way into the apartment, loudly calling Adelaide's name. The friend looked on, exasperated, but let him search. He checked every room, but there was no sign of Adelaide. I told you Addie wasn't here. What did you do this time to make her so angry? Since Adelaide wasn't there, Julian was in no mood to talk. He turned and left in a hurry, heading to the next friend's house. Along the way, his mind raced with all sorts of possible scenarios, his anxiety growing like a rampant weed. At the second house, he barely knocked a few times before shouting Adelaide's name. The friend came out, frowning. Julian, stop it. Addie isn't here. Running around like this isn't going to solve anything. Julian's eyes were wild. You're all lying to me. She must be with one of you. He went from house to house like this, each time ending in disappointment. The night grew deeper, and his steps grew heavier. By the time he had searched every friend's house and returned to his car, the sky was already beginning to lighten. He had found nothing. It was as if Adelaide had vanished into thin air. He dragged his exhausted body back to the villa and went into the bedroom. Despite not having slept all night, Julian felt no sleepiness. He was incredibly agitated. He pulled open a drawer to get a cigarette. Instead, he saw a divorce certificate lying quietly inside. Julian's hand froze in midair. His eyes widened, staring at the certificate as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He slowly reached out, picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly. He opened it and saw his and Adelaide's names clearly printed, with the date of divorce listed as yesterday. Julian's face instantly turned deathly pale. His body felt as if all its strength had been drained, and he collapsed onto a chair. Addie, why? How could this happen? He murmured, his voice filled with despair and disbelief. The next second, he suddenly remembered the document his grandfather had made him sign at the estate yesterday. Could it be that the document was the divorce agreement? Julian's pupils constricted. Without another thought, he bolted from the room and drove straight to the family estate. As soon as he entered the living room, he saw Arthur Donovan Sr. sitting on the sofa, leisurely sipping tea. He threw all etiquette and respect to the wind and questioned him loudly. Grandfather, why did you trick me into signing the divorce papers? Why did you agree to let Addie divorce me? Chapter 17, Arthur Donovan Sr. put down his teacup and slowly looked up. Julian, Adelaide never planned to forgive you. She begged me to approve your divorce. Seeing how determined she was, I helped her. He didn't intend to reveal the affair between Adelaide and Sebastian. Otherwise, the Donovan family would be thrown into chaos. Julian lost control and yelled, "No, impossible! Addie was planning to get pregnant. She was going to have a baby with me. How could she suddenly want a divorce? I don't believe it. The facts are right in front of you. You have to believe it whether you want to or not." Arthur was displeased with his shouting. "It's your fault. Who told you to be unable to control your urges and hurt Addie's heart? She has always been a strong-willed woman who can't tolerate any deceit. You were the one who challenged her bottom line. Who's to blame?" "I." Julian was at a loss for words. Arthur advised, "The divorce is final. I will announce it to everyone when the time is right. Let's leave it at that. Don't go bothering her anymore." "No, grandfather, I know I was wrong. I will make it up to Addie. I don't agree to the divorce. I have to find her. I can't lose Addie." Julian paced back and forth emotionally. Arthur frowned. "Julian, don't be so stubborn. She has already left this city. You won't be able to find her." Julian stopped in his tracks, looking at his grandfather in disbelief. "Left the city? Where did she go? Grandfather, you must know. Please tell me, I'm begging you." Arthur shook his head. I don't know where she went exactly. I only know she's not coming back. Julian felt as if all his support had been kicked out from under him. He slowly sank to the floor, holding his head in his hands, his eyes turning red. Waves of regret washed over him. He regretted it. He shouldn't have cheated. He shouldn't have broken Addie's heart. She didn't want him anymore. She really didn't want him anymore. Addie, how could you be so cruel? Arthur looked at him, feeling a twinge of pity, but he also felt this was a consequence Julian had to bear. You sowed the seeds, now you must reap the harvest. From now on, you're on your own. With that, Arthur stood up and left the living room, leaving Julian to drown in endless regret and pain. Julian left the estate in a daze, like a soulless zombie. He drove aimlessly and found himself at Roxy's apartment. He got out of the car, his steps unsteady, and weakly knocked on the door. Roxy opened the door and was stunned to see Julian in such a state. She quickly pulled him inside. Julian, what happened to you? You look terrible. Julian's eyes were vacant. He was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. Addie and I are divorced. A surge of ecstasy shot through Roxy's heart, but her face immediately feigned surprise and heartache. What? How could that happen? Julian, don't be too sad. Maybe there's still a chance to fix things. Julian shook his head in agony, slumping onto the sofa and running his hands through his hair. Roxy watched him, her eyes darting around. She gently patted his shoulder. Julian, don't think too much right now. I'll make you some honey water. It'll be good for your throat. With that, she turned and walked toward the kitchen. Her phone was on the coffee table. Just then, the screen lit up with a new message. Chapter 18. Julian glanced at it subconsciously. He hadn't meant to look, but the words in the message made his eyes widen in an instant. The message was from one of Roxy's friends. Roxy, you sent all those texts to provoke Adelaide Hartwell. How come they're still not divorced? When are you finally going to become Mrs. Donovan? I'm dying of anticipation. Julian's hand trembled slightly. He reached for Roxy's phone, unlocked it, and began scrolling through her text messages. Seeing the provocative, malicious texts sent to Adelaide, his pupils dilated, and he seethed with rage. Roxy came out of the kitchen with a glass of honey water. Seeing Julian with her phone, her face turned pale. Julian, why are you looking at my phone? Julian shot up, smashing the phone on the floor where it shattered into pieces. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at her, roaring, It was you, didn't I warn you not to tell Addie? How dare you, how dare you? His face was flushed, his voice cracking with rage. Roxy was in a complete panic, trying to explain, Julian, I didn't mean to. I was just thinking about our baby. Yes, I'm pregnant. It was just a moment of impulse. She grabbed Julian's hand and placed it on her stomach, trying to appeal to his soft side. But Julian flung her hand away, roaring, What do you think you're carrying? I only recognize a child born from Addie. Caught off guard, Roxy was thrown aside, her stomach slamming hard against a cabinet. A sharp pain shot through her lower abdomen, and she let out a terrified scream. Julian, my stomach hurts so much. Blood began to seep from between her legs. Julian, the baby, our baby, she cried out in pain, but Julian seemed not to hear. He gritted his teeth, shot Roxy a vicious glare, and strode out of the apartment without a second glance. Roxy lay alone in a pool of her own blood, crying in despair and helplessness. At the Donovan estate, another family banquet was being held. Adelaide's parents, David and Alina, along with Caleb, were invited. They were still unaware of the reason for today's gathering. After everyone was seated, Arthur Donovan SR slowly stood up. He cleared his throat, and the dining room fell silent. The patriarch's expression was grave. I've invited you all here today to make an announcement. Adelaide and Julian are divorced. Everyone was stunned. The Hartwells were even more so. Divorced? What's going on? How come we knew nothing about this? David Hartwell demanded, displeased. Alina chimed in, Mr. Donovan SR, this is absurd. How could they get a divorce without our consent? Arthur frowned slightly and sighed. Adelaide knelt and begged me. She said if I didn't agree, she would kill herself right in front of me. She was so determined, I couldn't bear it, so I agreed. Even if she begged you, you should have let us know what kind of behavior is this, David said sternly. Alina was both angry and anxious, her eyes turning red. That girl, Addie, she's so thoughtless, how could she be so willful? So where is Addie now? Caleb was more concerned about his sister's whereabouts. Chapter 19. Arthur Donovan SR shook his head. I'm not sure. She only asked me to pass on a message to you. She said she's never coming back, and she hopes you'll take care of yourselves. That child, how could she be so unfilial, to just leave like that? We raised her for nothing. Eleanor couldn't control her emotions and burst into tears. The others rushed to console her. Some disapproved of Adelaide's actions and couldn't help but criticize her. Others supported her, and the two groups soon found themselves at odds, on the verge of an argument. Seeing the situation getting out of hand, Arthur waved his hand. What's done is done. There's no point in saying more. Everyone should go home for now. Just then, Julian, who had been sitting silently in the corner, suddenly shot up and said loudly, "Grandfather, I won't give up on Addie. I will find her." Without waiting for a response, he ran out, leaving a room full of people staring at each other. After the banquet, Arthur, his face dark, summoned Sebastian to the study. As soon as he entered, Arthur tossed several photos onto the desk. "Sebastian, these are potential marriage candidates I've found for you. Find some time to meet them." Sebastian didn't even glance at the photos and refused directly. "Father, I'm not in the mood. You don't need to worry about it." Arthur's temper flared. "How old are you? Still not considering getting married? What are you planning to do?" He was filled with regret now. He should have made Sebastian marry and have children earlier. To avoid a scandal like sleeping with his nephew's wife, Sebastian stared at Arthur, his dark eyes narrowing. Last night, Adelaide had stood him up. He had thought she just didn't want to meet him for the time being, but he never expected her to run away, disappearing without a trace. For the past 2 days, it wasn't just Julian looking for Adelaide. He was looking for her too. He had more information than Julian, having traced the travel tickets and plane tickets Adelaide had purchased. She was determined not to be found, buying over a dozen tickets for different destinations at different times. Finding her was like looking for a needle in a haystack. That woman, really? Sebastian irritably tugged at his collar, his flat tone questioning, "Father, are you sure you don't know where Addie is?" Arthur was surprised by his sudden question, especially since it was about Adelaide. He grew even angrier, his face turning red as he pointed at Sebastian and yelled, "You scoundrel, do you really think I don't know about your disgusting affair with Adelaide? How could I have raised such a monster, sleeping with your own nephew's wife? Have you no shame?" So, his father knew. No wonder he had agreed to let Adelaide get a divorce. Sebastian's face was calm, without a hint of guilt. "Dad, Addie and I love each other. If you've hidden her away because of this, I won't be happy." "Love each other?" Arthur laughed with rage. "Do you know what Adelaide told me? She used your reputation to threaten me into agreeing to the divorce, you fool. You're being used by a woman and you don't even know it." Sebastian smiled faintly. "Then she's quite clever." "You!" Arthur trembled with anger. "I'm telling you, I will never agree to you and Adelaide being together. The Donovan family can't afford this disgrace. You'd better give up on this idea and find a well-matched young lady to marry immediately." "That's impossible. If there's nothing else, I'll be going." Sebastian's refusal was blunt. He turned and walked out of the study, leaving Arthur fuming and gasping for breath. Chapter 20. That day, Roxy Fletcher lay in a pool of blood, crying out in pain, but no one paid her any mind. Finally, a neighbor heard the commotion and called an ambulance. At the hospital, after emergency treatment, the doctor came out, shaking his head helplessly. The baby couldn't be saved. And because her injuries were so severe this time, it will be very difficult for her to have children in the future. Roxy's family had believed she had a rich boyfriend. They thought she had miscarried, because the man didn't want to take responsibility and had deliberately pushed her. Coupled with the fact that Roxy had also lost her ability to have children, her family was furious and resentful. They quickly gathered a group of relatives and marched menacingly to the entrance of the Donovan group. At the entrance, Roxy's uncle yelled at the top of his lungs, "Julian Donovan, you heartless bastard, come out and give us an explanation." The others joined in, some holding signs that read, "Julian Donovan got my daughter pregnant and refuses to take responsibility." Roxy's parents started a live stream on their phones, their voices filled with indignation. "Everyone, come and see the general manager of the Donovan group. Julian Donovan is my daughter's boyfriend. But he abandoned her after she got pregnant and even intentionally harmed her, causing her to miscarry and lose her ability to have children. This black-hearted man deceived my daughter's body and feelings. Please, "Everyone, help us get justice," Roxy's mother cried hysterically. "Do rich people just get to bully us common folk like this? Is there no justice in the world?" A large crowd of employees gathered at the entrance, watching the spectacle and gossiping. When Julian heard the news, his face turned dark as storm clouds. He ordered security to handle it and drive the Fletcher family away. The security team was large, but so was the Fletcher family. The two sides began to shove each other, and the scene quickly descended into chaos. The news spread like wildfire online, trending on social media within minutes. Soon, someone revealed that Julian Donovan was married. His actions were nothing short of an extramarital affair, and Roxy Fletcher was the other woman, a homewrecker. The live stream was flooded with netizens, furiously cursing the Fletcher family for being shameless enough to demand justice. The Fletcher family was dumbfounded. They had all believed Julian was Roxy's legitimate boyfriend after all. Roxy herself had said so. They never imagined she was just his kept mistress. The speed of the internet was staggering. Roxy's photo was soon plastered everywhere. At that moment, Roxy was lying in a hospital bed, recovering. The other patients in her room suddenly started looking at her strangely. Someone couldn't help but whisper to the person next to them, "She must be that other woman, the one who had an affair with her boss and ruined his marriage. She looks exactly the same, it must be her. Didn't they say she had a miscarriage?" It all adds up. What a shameless woman. She could be anything, but she chose to be a mistress. So unlucky to be in the same room as a mistress. The whispers reached Roxy's ears, and her face instantly turned pale. One particularly short-tempered patient called for a nurse. "Nurse, we don't want to share a room with a shameless mistress. Can you move her out?" The nurse, who had also caught up on the gossip, gave Roxy a disdainful look. "The wards are full, we can't move her. You'll just have to put up with it." So annoying. Who wants to be in the same room as a mistress? Everyone looked at Roxy with disgust and contempt. Roxy was mortified, her cheeks burning. She could only turn her back to them and pretend she couldn't hear anything. But they continued to complain, and their complaints escalated until they were confronting her directly, pointing their phones at her face for a live stream, relentlessly asking her why she became a mistress. They even forced her to apologize to the original wife. Roxy couldn't escape. She cried and begged them to turn off the live stream, but the female patient was relentless, keeping the camera right in her face. When others in the hospital saw what was happening, they flocked to the room to watch. The doorway was soon blocked by a massive crowd. Among them were people whose families had been destroyed by mistresses. Overcome with emotion, they rushed in and started beating her. Chapter 21, "No, don't hit me." Roxy was dragged off the bed. The agitated patients beat her mercilessly. She screamed in pain, curled up in a ball, and begged for mercy. Finally, security arrived just in time to save the bruised and barely conscious woman. Meanwhile, Julian Donovan wasn't faring much better. The internet was filled with condemnation. Outraged netizens flooded the Donovan Group's official website with insults. "Don't just blame the woman, the man is the real culprit. I heard his wife caught him cheating the first time, and he swore he'd change, but then he went right back to his mistress. His wife apparently got so angry she left him and hasn't been seen since. Damn, what a jerk." A mysterious netizen also leaked private photos and videos of Julian and Roxy. This time, Julian lost both face and dignity. Not only that, because of him, netizens began to judge the Donovan family's upbringing, unleashing another torrent of criticism. The family's reputation as a scholarly and respected household plummeted overnight. Negative comments were everywhere. The Donovan Group's stock price plummeted. The situation was dire. In his office, Julian saw the leaked photos and was so furious that the veins on his neck bulged. Who did this?" he roared, slamming his hand on the desk. Just then, a call came from the family estate. On the other end, Arthur Donovan Sr. bellowed for him to get back there immediately. The moment he arrived, his grandfather, without a word, had someone bring out the instruments for family discipline. "You rebellious son, you've ruined the entire family's reputation and the image of the Donovan Group." The old man's jowls trembled with rage. He roared at the servants. Beat him until he learns his lesson." The heavy rod fell on Julian's back. The pain made his face turn pale, but he gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. This was what he deserved. He had wronged Adelaide. He deserved to be beaten. Soon, Julian's back was a mess of torn flesh and blood. He was beaten half to death, unable to even get up from the floor. After the beating, Arthur was still not satisfied. Strip him of his general manager position. I will not allow him to continue to damage the group's reputation. Julian's father, watching from the side, felt his heart ache and quickly pleaded for mercy. Dad, Julian knows he was wrong. Please spare him this time. If his position is revoked, how will he establish himself in the family in the future? Arthur glared at his son. You dare to plead for him. This is all because you spoiled him. Look at the mess. He's made no one's pleas will work today. Say one more word, and both you and your son can get out of the Donovan family. Julian's father was scolded into silence, his head bowed. Arthur looked at the prone figure of Julian on the floor, his voice filled with disappointment. You'd better reflect on your actions. Julian weakly opened his mouth, wanting to say something but lacking the strength. Arthur snorted, flicked his sleeves, and turned to leave, leaving Julian lying there in the dead silence, only the sound of his faint breathing remaining. Julian's father looked at his son's miserable state, sighed helplessly, and then quickly had the servants carry him to his room to treat his wounds. At that moment, in the Blue Cloud Group headquarters, an assistant looked at Sebastian Donovan, who was sitting on the sofa, and couldn't help but ask, Mr. Donovan, you had the PR department manipulate the news about young Master Julian's affair. Now, the entire Donovan family and the Donovan Group are embroiled in a massive negative PR crisis. Is this really okay? Sebastian crossed his long legs, his expression indifferent. For raising a degenerate like Julian, this is the lesson the Donovan family deserves. If the old master finds out you were pulling the strings, he'll be furious, the assistant said, a little worried. Sebastian looked unconcerned. How is the search for her coming along? The assistant replied. We haven't found her yet, but I did find something else. Speak. Miss Hartwell is pregnant. Chapter 22. Hearing this, Sebastian's body stiffened, and a complex mix of emotions, joy, and even more so, worry flashed in his eyes. Pregnant, he murmured to himself. A moment later, his brow furrowed deeply. Then she's out there all alone and pregnant. It must be so hard for her. We have to find her as soon as possible. The assistant added, Sir, with all the chaos in the media right now, I'm afraid finding Miss Hartwell will be even more difficult. Sebastian's gaze hardened. No matter what, intensify the search. Use every resource available. We must find her. I will not let anything happen to her or the child. On the other side, Julian was carried to his room by the servants. His father stood by, his heart aching as he watched the doctor treat Julian's wounds. Julian weakly opened his eyes and looked at his father, speaking with difficulty. Dad, I regret it. I'm the one who lost Addie. As he spoke, tears of regret streamed from the corners of his eyes. He hated himself for not being able to control his desires, for not being able to be completely faithful to Adelaide. Addie, I'm so sorry, his father sighed. What's the use of saying that now? Just focus on healing. Once you're better, you can think about what to do next. I will find Addie, Julian said, closing his eyes, his chest aching with a dull pain. At the Donovan Group, the massive negative publicity had thrown the entire company into a state of panic. Many partners were calling to inquire about the situation, and several had already proposed suspending their joint projects. The senior executives gathered, their faces grim. What are we going to do? If this continues, the group's losses will be enormous. We need to do some crisis management, but with the situation as it is, it won't be easy to solve. Arthur Donovan SR sat alone in his study, looking at the records of how his ancestors had built the family business, his brow furrowed with worry. Julian, oh Julian, you've really brought disaster upon the family. How on earth are we going to clean up this mess? Meanwhile, Sebastian, after giving his assistant a few more instructions, stood up and walked to the window, his gaze dark and unreadable as he looked out. Adelaide Hartwell, I will find you, and I will protect you and our child. While chaos reigned back home, Adelaide, who had already landed in the Netherlands, was living a very comfortable life. At 18, she had traveled to the Netherlands alone and had met a good friend, Jack. Because Julian disliked her making friends with men, she had never mentioned this friend to him, and no one else knew about him. When her plane landed, Jack was there to pick her up. After she had set her mind on divorce, she knew she would leave one day, so she had asked Jack to help her buy a small detached villa in the Netherlands long in advance. The neighbors were very friendly, and Adelaide had been living here for nearly a month, happy every single day. She sat on the swing in her yard, basking in the sun, the shadows of her past seeming to have been blown away. "Hey, Addie," Jack said, walking familiarly into her yard, holding a basket of fruits and vegetables. "My mom wanted you to try these. I'll take them inside for you." Jack's mother was Chinese and loved to grow vegetables. She was very good at it and loved to share her surplus with the neighbors. After putting the things away, Jack returned to the yard and pulled up a chair in front of her. Adelaide smiled. "Please thank your auntie for me." Jack waved his hand. "We can't finish it all anyway. My mom is happy to have someone to share with." After saying that, Jack's gaze fell on her still flat stomach. "Addie, what are you planning to do about the baby?" Chapter 23. Adelaide lowered her head slightly, her fingers unconsciously stroking her abdomen. "I haven't decided yet." Originally, she had been determined to have an abortion, but after a month of the fetus growing inside her, she found herself hesitating, perhaps due to hormonal changes. Jack looked at her and said earnestly, "Addie, you need to decide soon. Dutch law only allows abortions for pregnancies under 24 weeks. Time is running out." Adelaide bit her lower lip and was silent for a long time before she finally said, "I know, Jack. Let me think about it a little more." That night, Adelaide lay alone in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts a tangled mess. Her hand gently rested on her abdomen. It was still flat, but she knew a small life was growing inside. Her child. Adelaide's heart was a mix of emotions. She truly didn't know what to do. She had already developed feelings for the baby in her womb, but she was also worried that this child, conceived under such circumstances, would bring endless trouble and complications. After all, its biological father was Sebastian Donovan. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep, her mind replaying the events of her past from her painful marriage to her current escape. She knew she couldn't afford to fall into a new predicament. Finally, just before dawn, she made a decision. She couldn't keep this child. The next day, Adelaide went to the hospital early and scheduled an abortion at the obstetrics and gynecology front desk. The staff informed her that the procedure was scheduled for a month later. She nodded silently and then turned to leave the hospital. Although she had made her decision, her heart was heavy. She went to the supermarket, trying to distract herself with shopping. She walked slowly between the aisles, picking out household items and food. When she returned home, carrying large bags, she was surprised to find a familiar figure standing at her doorstep. Sebastian Donovan stood there quietly, his eyes locked on her. His dark eyes were unreadable, seeming to hide an indescribable complexity of emotions. Adelaide's steps froze, and the color drained from her face. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and the shopping bags nearly slipped from her grasp. "You, how are you here?" Adelaide gripped the bags tightly, trying to remain calm. Sebastian walked toward her, step by step, and took the two heavy shopping bags from her hands. He looked down at her, a smile slowly appearing in his eyes. "Since you stood me up, I didn't mind coming to you." Adelaide knew what he was talking about. The day she left, she had lied to him, not going to see him. She pressed her lips together, adopting a cold expression. "Uncle, you should already know that Julian and I are divorced. I have no connection to your Donovan family anymore." "So what? I don't care," Sebastian said with a light laugh. Adelaide frowned and decided to throw caution to the wind. "I'll be honest with you. I only had an affair with you to use you to pressure the old master into agreeing to my divorce from Julian. Now that I've achieved my goal, you're of no use to me. I won't have anything to do with you ever again." Sebastian's gaze slowly fell to her stomach, the smile in his eyes deepening. "How can there be no connection? I'm the father of your child." He knew, of course he knew. Adelaide took a deep breath and lied, "I already had an abortion." "Addie, you're still a terrible liar." Sebastian, holding the bags with one hand, reached out with the other to gently stroke her reddening earlobe. "See, your ears are red." Adelaide fell silent. In front of this old fox, Sebastian, she was like an open book. "Addie, I know you scheduled the procedure for next month." Sebastian put down the shopping bags, his large hands gripping her shoulders, his calm, dark eyes staring into hers. "Please, give me 1 month. If I can't make you fall in love with me, then you can have the abortion." I won't stop you. I could never fall in love with you, Adelaide said sharply, then asked in confusion, why do you want this child so badly? For him, an illegitimate child would only be a stain on his reputation. If he wanted a child, there were plenty of women willing to bear one for him. Sebastian gently lifted her chin, their eyes meeting. He said, word for word, because I like you. I have for a long time. Chapter 24, he said he liked her, for a long time. Adelaide was stunned for a moment, then asked in astonishment, what do you mean? Sebastian smiled, releasing her chin and taking her hand instead, as naturally and familiarly as he had back in their home country. You're pregnant. You shouldn't be standing for so long. Shall we go inside and sit down? Adelaide hesitated, but finally nodded slowly. Inside, Sebastian looked around at the decor. The color scheme was a warm pink and orange. There wasn't much furniture, but it had everything one would need. The floor was so clean it shone. There were also many plants and flower pots on the balcony. It was clear that she was happy here. Sebastian placed the shopping bags on the coffee table and took out the food items, arranging them one by one in the refrigerator, as adeptly as if he were in his own home, not treating himself as a guest at all. Adelaide had also bought some intimate apparel. He took it out, raised an eyebrow, and glanced playfully at the woman sitting on the sofa. Do you have a separate washing machine for underwear? If not, I can hand wash it for you, he said matter-of-factly. Adelaide's cheeks flushed. She quickly walked over and snatched it from him. That's not necessary. She took the shopping bag into the bedroom and came back out. The man was already sitting on the sofa, having poured himself a glass of water and one for her as well. Adelaide walked over to him, frowning. What did you mean by what you just said? What did he mean? He liked her, and for a long time, she didn't understand at all. Sebastian patted the spot next to him, motioning for her to sit. She had no intention of sitting next to him and instead sat on the single armchair behind him. Seeing her defensive posture, Sebastian couldn't help but laugh. What are you laughing at? Just tell me what you mean, Adelaide said with a frown. Sebastian propped his left elbow on the armrest of the sofa, his long fingers supporting his forehead, his eyes always smiling as he looked at her. He said, do you remember your engagement party with Julian? Adelaide, of course, remembered. She thought for a moment. That day seemed to be the first time she had met Sebastian. This golden boy of the Donovan family had grown up abroad. Even though the Donovans and Hartwells were old family friends, and she often went to the Donovan estate to play with Julian, she had never seen him. She nodded. I remember. Why? That day, a clumsy little cat bumped into my arms. Sebastian's gaze was intense as he looked at her, but his tone was teasingly improper. The first time I saw that little cat, I thought, I wanted to make her mine. But he never expected that the woman he had fallen for at first sight would be the star of the engagement party, his nominal niece-in-law. No one knew how complicated Sebastian's feelings were that night. He had finally fallen for someone, only for her to be his nephew's wife. Hearing his words, Adelaide was stunned. Did he mean he had fallen for her at first sight? Are you lying to me? Adelaide didn't believe him at all, her voice wary. There's nothing about me worth scheming for. A man like Sebastian had women lining up from the Netherlands back to China for him. She didn't think she had any special quality that would make him fall for her at first sight. Sebastian walked over to her and squatted down, his tall frame looking up at her with eyes as gentle as water. What I'm scheming for is you. His gaze was too deep. Adelaide couldn't understand it, nor did she want to. She remained cold. Even if you do like me, so what? I don't like you, and I never could. It was wrong of me to use you, but our affair was consensual. You didn't lose anything, so we're even. If he hadn't been willing, her seduction would not have succeeded. Adelaide felt a flicker of guilt, but not much. After all, when they were together, she had cooperated with all her might, doing everything she could and couldn't do for him, satisfying all his desires. She stood up, her tone distant as she showed him the door. You should go. Don't come back. Sebastian took her hand. I'm not leaving. I'm staying here to take care of you and our child. Chapter 25. After that day, Sebastian truly stayed in the Netherlands, just as he had said he would. Adelaide didn't know where he was living, but every day, like a preset alarm clock, he would appear at her doorstep right on time. In the morning, as the first rays of sunlight streamed down, Adelaide would open her door to see Sebastian's tall, upright figure. He never came empty-handed. The items he brought were always varied, sometimes a bouquet of fresh flowers, sometimes daily necessities, sometimes food, and sometimes a carefully chosen gift. She refused them all, but he paid no mind, still bringing the items into her house. He was very domineering, very assertive. At first, Adelaide would get angry, but after a while she grew numb to it and just let him be. It wasn't her money he was spending anyway. Today he came again, bringing steaming hot pastries, their sweet aroma filling the air. "I brought you some pastries. Have a taste." In the yard, Sebastian smiled and offered them to her. Adelaide glanced at them, her expression sour. "I don't need them. Take them away." "Then you can have them when you're hungry," Sebastian said, walking into the house on his own and putting the pastries down. Adelaide couldn't be bothered with him and picked up a watering can to water her flowers. The sun was strong, and tiny beads of sweat formed on the tip of her nose. Sebastian reached for her watering can. "Addie, let me help you." "You go rest." "No need," Adelaide said without looking up, her tone cold. Sebastian wasn't discouraged. He silently opened a parasol to shield her from the harsh sun, and with a handkerchief in his other hand, he gently wiped the sweat from her forehead. When she finished watering, Sebastian quickly handed her a glass of honey water at the perfect temperature. "Have some water to rehydrate." "Why are you still here? Just go," Adelaide said irritably. The man, used to being on top, didn't get angry. He ruffled her hair. "I'll make you dinner before I leave. I can cook for myself. I don't need your fake kindness." Adelaide slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me," Sebastian explained in a serious tone. "I've carefully researched the precautions for pregnant women. Pregnant women shouldn't be exposed to too much cooking smoke. It's not good for them or the baby." "Ha, you Donovan men really care about your bloodline," Adelaide said mockingly. Sebastian reached out to touch her face, his eyes sincere. "I care more about you." Adelaide couldn't help but laugh out loud. "If I weren't pregnant, would the great Mr. Donovan condescend to cook for me?" It was a wrongful relationship from the start. What was the point of pretending to be so sincere? Even if he did like her, so what? Julian had once loved her very much, but he still couldn't control his urges and betrayed their marriage and love. There were no faithful men in this world, and Sebastian was no different. She no longer believed in a man's love and had no interest in falling into the vortex of romance again. She had just managed to break free. She would have to be a fool to repeat her mistakes. Sebastian could read her mind. He understood her worries, her resistance, and the high walls she had built around her heart. It didn't matter. He was a very patient man. There was no need to rush winning over his wife. A slow and steady approach was also good. "Time will prove everything," Sebastian said suddenly. Adelaide snorted dismissively and turned away, ignoring him. Sebastian wasn't annoyed. He went straight into the kitchen and got busy. Before long, the enticing aroma of cooking filled the air. Sebastian brought the dishes to the table one by one and called out softly, "Addie, time to eat." "I'm not eating," Adelaide said stubbornly from the sofa. But the aroma of the food kept wafting into her nose, and she struggled to resist her appetite. Sebastian seemed to see through her and persuaded her again. "Have some. It's really good." Adelaide hesitated for a moment but ultimately couldn't resist the temptation of the food. She got up, sat at the dining table, and started eating. As she ate, she didn't forget to emphasize, "Don't get me wrong. Even if I eat your food, I won't fall in love with you. I've already said I won't have anything to do with the Donovan family anymore." Sebastian just watched her dotingly, a faint smile on his lips, saying nothing. His gaze was deep and gentle, as if it could draw a person in. Adelaide, under his gaze, felt her heart skip a beat. She lowered her head, avoiding his eyes. Chapter 26. Over the next month, Sebastian frequented her house more and more. She always gave him a cold shoulder, but Sebastian didn't seem to mind at all, always greeting her with a smile and treating her with tenderness. He said he would take care of her, and it wasn't just talk. He proved it with his actions. Sebastian seemed different from the rich scions back home who had never lifted a finger. He was very good at life housework, organizing, cooking, he could do it all. He took charge of her 3 meals a day, remembering exactly what she liked and disliked, and every day only her favorite foods were on the table. When she was with the Hartwell family, she wasn't allowed to be a picky eater. Her mother always said it was for her own good, but the foods her father and brother disliked never appeared on the dining table. At the time, she had wondered why. Now, thinking back, it was simply because she wasn't a true master of the Hartwell family, so no one cared. But Sebastian cared. It was strange. Her family, who had lived with her for over 20 years, didn't care, but he did. This world was truly something she couldn't understand. Not only that, Sebastian even hand-washed her intimate apparel, leaving Adelaide at a loss for words. At the same time, her feelings were complicated. When she was with Julian, even though he loved her, he would never do these things, not even cook a single meal. In that relationship, she was always the one giving. She never knew what it felt like to be taken care of. Her mother had said that a wife was naturally meant to take care of her husband's life, that it was normal, because the man was the sky, the pillar of the family, and everything they had was a gift from their husband. So, taking care of a husband's life was what was expected. Could a husband not take care of his wife? Her mother had no answer. Perhaps her mother had never experienced the feeling of being taken care of by her husband either. As the days went by, under Sebastian's care, Adelaide's whole being glowed. Her complexion was rosy, and she was full of energy. Even Jack said that Sebastian was a natural at nurturing people. She didn't argue. Sebastian was an excellent cook and would often share his dishes with the neighbors. Now, all the neighbors had been won over by him, praising him as a great boyfriend. Yes, the neighbors all thought he was her boyfriend. To avoid gossip, she didn't correct them. Even Jack had defected to Sebastian's side, always speaking up for him, advising her not to be once bitten, twice shy. Men are always good at pretending before they get what they want. Adelaide said coolly, lying on the rocking chair. Jack thought for a moment and said, "Addie, I don't think Sebastian is an ordinary man. He's very genuine." Adelaide said, "You've only known him for a few days and you think you know him? You know me, I'm a man. Men know men best." Jack said seriously, "If he were a bad guy, I would definitely be able to tell. After all, I'm not a good guy myself." Adelaide was speechless. She chuckled lightly. "I'm not a gambler." She didn't want to invest her emotions in gambling on a man's love and loyalty again. That was too boring. Chapter 27, the afternoon sun cast a soft glow on the street as Adelaide went for her usual walk. Dressed in a loose maternity dress, she walked slowly and leisurely along the park path. Sebastian, worried about her being out alone but unwilling to go against her wishes to walk by herself, silently followed a short distance behind, his eyes always fixed on her. Accidents always happen unexpectedly. A black car screeched to a halt by the roadside. The doors flew open, and two burly men jumped out. Before Adelaide could react, they rushed forward. One covered her mouth while the other tried to drag her into the car. Adelaide's eyes widened in terror. She struggled desperately, kicking her legs wildly. "Let her go." At that critical moment, Sebastian lunged forward like a cheetah. He pulled Adelaide away from the two kidnappers and shielded her behind him. The kidnappers, confident in their 2-on-1 advantage, pulled out a dagger and lunged at him. "Addie, stand back." Sebastian engaged the two men. He was tall and had trained in combat, so they couldn't get the upper hand. One of them turned and lunged at Adelaide, who was frozen in fear. Seeing this, Sebastian rushed to protect her. The kidnapper behind him took the opportunity to stab viciously at his back with the dagger. Focused on Adelaide, he couldn't dodge in time. A long gash was cut into his back, and blood instantly soaked through his shirt. "Sebastian, you're hurt." Adelaide's pupils constricted. He didn't say a word, turning to fight the kidnappers again. After a fierce struggle, the men, knowing they couldn't win, fled in a panic. Sebastian, weakened by his injury and exhaustion, turned pale and swayed on his feet. Adelaide, already pale with fright, rushed forward to support him, her voice trembling. "Are you okay?" "Don't scare me." Sebastian managed a faint smile. "I'm fine, don't worry." "So much blood, how can you be fine?" Adelaide panicked and quickly called for an ambulance. In the emergency room, the doctor stitched up Sebastian's wound. His face was pale with pain and sweat beaded on his forehead, but he remained silent. As the needle pierced his skin, Adelaide couldn't bear to watch and turned her head away, her eyes red. Her heart felt heavy. Her nose stung. This fool, how could he get hurt for her? Wasn't he afraid he might die? After the stitches were done, the doctor gave some instructions and left. "Addie," he called her. Adelaide turned back, her eyelashes wet, her eyes looking as if they had been washed with water. He was taken aback. "Why are you crying? Why did you do that?" Adelaide bit her lip, her tone fierce. Do you think getting hurt for me will make me fall for you, make me love you? Sebastian took her hand and said seriously, I wasn't thinking that. Protecting you is what I should do. If a man can't even protect the woman he loves, can he even be called a man? When you like me, you'll do anything. But if you stop loving me, Addie, I'm not good with sweet talk, and I don't like making verbal promises. He squeezed her hand, his magnetic voice cutting through her choked sobs. He looked into her eyes and said, word for word, time will prove my heart. You can test me for as long as you want, I'll wait. Sebastian, Adelaide's eyes grew redder. You're a liar, you're the best at sweet talk. Sebastian was a little confused. Before he could ask, Adelaide's phone rang. She answered it. After hanging up, her expression was complicated. Sebastian asked, what's wrong? Who was that? Adelaide bit her lip. The obstetrics clinic. They said a pregnant woman canceled her abortion, so my appointment can be moved up. I can go tomorrow. Sebastian looked at her silently. After a long moment, he asked with difficulty, are you going to do it? She bit her lip, silent for a long time. Perhaps silence was the answer. A flicker of disappointment crossed Sebastian's eyes, but he still gently squeezed her fingers. I'll go with you tomorrow. An abortion is still a surgery, you can't be alone. Before he could finish, his lips were suddenly covered by hers. He was stunned, then overjoyed, and responded to her kiss with deep affection. When the kiss ended, Adelaide looked at him with her red-rimmed eyes, as if having made a decision. Sebastian, I'll take one more gamble. He understood what she meant. I won't let you lose. Sebastian reached up to stroke her face, his tone more determined than ever before. He pulled her into his arms. They looked at each other for a moment and then kissed again. Chapter 28. Across the ocean, Julian Donovan was living in a daze. Unable to find Adelaide, he drowned his sorrows in alcohol, neglecting everything. Even Arthur Donovan SR couldn't stand it anymore and summoned him to the estate for a stern lecture. He arrived, his face unshaven, walking like a zombie toward the study. From inside, he could hear Caleb Hartwell's low roar. Others might not know, but I personally saw Sebastian holding Addie. Their relationship is far from simple. Now that Addie has been missing for so long, are you telling me Sebastian has nothing to do with it? Addie is my sister, she's just vanished. Your Donovan family has to give me an explanation. Don't tell me she just left on her own and doesn't want to come back. We need proof of life, not to be left in the dark about whether she's alive or dead. Julian froze. What had he just heard? Addie and his uncle. How was that possible? He didn't want to believe it, but all the strange details from the past slowly resurfaced. The hickey on her neck, the similar outfits at the airport, the night she didn't come home. Julian's face turned pale, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Addie, are you getting revenge on me? He remembered that Sebastian had flown to the Netherlands 2 or 3 months ago. A thought suddenly struck him. Could Adelaide be there? He couldn't wait another moment and immediately booked a flight to the Netherlands. Upon arrival, Julian used some of his connections and actually managed to find Adelaide's address. He walked toward the house with a heavy heart, but as he got closer, he saw a heartbreaking scene through the wrought iron gate. Adelaide and Sebastian were locked in a passionate kiss. What are you doing? Julian, like a rabid beast, charged in. Without a word, he rushed at Sebastian and threw a punch. Sebastian quickly shielded Adelaide and caught Julian's fist. Sebastian, you seduced your nephew's wife, are you even human? Julian was consumed by rage, swinging punch after punch at the man. Sebastian frowned, only defending himself, not fighting back. He took a punch to the cheekbone. When Adelaide came to her senses, she rushed forward to stop them. Stop it, Julian, stop. She tugged hard on Julian's arm. Julian, his eyes red, glared at Adelaide. You're defending him. How could you do this to me? Adelaide stood in front of Sebastian and said angrily, because the person I love now is Sebastian, and he's the father of my child. Of course, I'm going to defend him. Julian was struck by lightning, his body stiffening. You're pregnant. That's right, I'm pregnant. And this child is Sebastian's, Adelaide admitted openly. Julian's face turned ashen. He grabbed Adelaide's shoulders and shook her frantically. Addie, how could you betray me? That's enough, let her go. Sebastian frowned, pushing Julian away and shielding Adelaide. Have you forgotten what you did? You were the one who wronged Addie first. Julian clutched his head in pain. After a while, he looked at Adelaide pleadingly. Addie, since you cheated too, we're even. I know I was wrong. Can we get remarried? I promise I'll treat you well from now on. I'll never betray you again, Addie. Adelaide said coolly. Impossible. We're over. Julian, if you don't want me to despise you even more, then stop bothering me and Sebastian. With that, she glanced at Sebastian, and they went back into the house together, closing the door. Julian stood there, stunned, watching Adelaide and Sebastian's intertwined figures, his eyes turning red. His lips trembled, wanting to say something, but not knowing where to start. It was his fault. He couldn't control his desires and broke Addie's heart. He betrayed her first. Everything was his fault. Endless regret washed over him. Julian's heart felt as if it were being squeezed by a giant hand, the pain so intense he could barely breathe. He slowly sank to his knees, closing his eyes in agony. Addie! An unknown amount of time passed, and the sky grew dark. Finally, Julian dragged his heavy feet and walked out of the yard, his spirit completely broken. Chapter 29. After that one encounter with Julian, Adelaide never saw him again. He had come in a hurry and left just as quickly. Adelaide's life returned to its peaceful routine, and she continued to be well cared for by Sebastian every day. But as time went on, she couldn't help but worry. Are you sure it's okay for you not to go back to the country? What about your work? Sebastian was holding her legs, massaging them to relieve the swelling. Hearing her words, he looked up at her and smiled. I can handle it remotely. What I can't handle, the senior executives will. But I'm already preparing to move the company headquarters to the Netherlands. What? She was surprised. Are you sure? Sebastian nodded, the pressure of his massage just right. Of course, but the Donovan family's connections and circle are all back home. Adelaide frowned. The old master will definitely not agree. Sebastian smiled nonchalantly. Even if he doesn't agree, there's nothing he can do. My wife and child are the most important. I don't want to go back to an empty house by myself. Adelaide hesitated for a moment. How about, I go back with you? Sebastian was slightly taken aback and his hands stopped moving. He looked at Adelaide seriously. Addie, you don't have to force yourself. You're very happy living in the Netherlands. I don't want you to change your mind because of me. There's too much complicated history for us back home. I don't want you to get caught up in all that trouble again. Sebastian, I know you're thinking of me, but I don't want you to give up so much because of me either. We can face it together. It's better than you having to bear it all alone. For his sake, she wanted to be brave for once. Sebastian took her hand and said, Addie, to me, your happiness is the most important thing. He understood better than anyone that Adelaide wouldn't be happy if she went back. Once she returned, she would become the daughter of the Hartwell family again, an unhappy, caged bird. But in the Netherlands, she was a free bird. For her freedom and happiness, he was willing to give up anything. Adelaide, of course, understood his heart. Her eyes instantly turned red, and she leaned gently into his embrace. When you're like this, I feel guilty. Sebastian stroked her hair and said gently, compared to you carrying our child, what is the sacrifice? Addie, I'm the one who owes you. Love is always feeling indebted. Adelaide's eyes stung. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Sebastian, I think I really won the gamble. Sebastian bent down and kissed her lips. I told you I wouldn't let you lose. The days passed, and her belly grew bigger. After a full 10 months, she successfully gave birth to a daughter, whose pet name was Zhao. Sebastian was overjoyed. He first kissed Adelaide's forehead, then carefully picked up the baby, his eyes filled with the joy of a new father. Addie, look, she's so beautiful, just like you. Adelaide smiled, looking at Sebastian and the baby, her heart filled with warmth. In the days that followed, Sebastian was even busier. Even though he had hired several top-tier nannies and maternity nurses, he was never at ease and personally took care of Adelaide's recovery and the newborn baby. He learned to change diapers and prepare formula. Although he was a bit clumsy at first, he quickly became proficient. Time flew by, and their daughter turned 1 month old. Back home, Arthur Donovan Sr. and the Hartwell family learned that Adelaide had given birth and insisted on coming to the Netherlands to visit. Sebastian asked for Adelaide's opinion. After a moment's hesitation, she agreed. Unexpectedly, another person came as well, Julian. He seemed to be doing much better than before. He looked at Adelaide with a complex mix of emotions. Addie, congratulations on becoming a mother. Adelaide smiled faintly, as if she no longer remembered the past. You're here, Please have a seat. Julian shook his head. He took a gift from his coat and handed it to her. This is a gift for Jiajao. Thank you, Adelaide accepted it. Addie, Julian looked at her, a bitter smile on his face. Seeing you so happy, I can rest assured. Uncle is indeed better than me. With that, he left, his back a lonely figure. Sebastian came over and wrapped his arm around her waist. After glancing at the retreating figure, he looked down at her. Dinner is ready. Let's go to the dining room, she chuckled softly. Okay. The end finished.